Before we dive into the final chapter of this intense, realistic story, if this series made you think, feel, or question what's real, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have made the same choice Olivia did? Your voice matters, and it helps us keep creating stories that feel like fiction, but could just as easily be your life. Something sharper. Anger. Not the screaming, flailing kind. The kind that burns slow, deep, and purposeful. She stood up. Wiped her tears. If he wanted this clean and quiet, he had another thing coming. She walked straight to her bedroom, opened her laptop, and logged into their joint online banking portal. She stared at the screen, her breath catching. 2 accounts. The main one, the one where both their salaries used to land, was practically empty. 1,000 and some change. That was it. Her vision blurred, but she blinked hard, focused on the second account. It was under her name, opened years ago when she freelanced from home, before Daniel insisted everything go through his financial advisor. Balance: $23,780.44. It wasn't millions. But it was something. It was hers. In that moment, Olivia understood everything. He wasn't just leaving. He was executing a plan. Clean. Efficient. Emotionally detached. Like a good lawyer. She snapped the laptop shut. She wasn't going to be the last to act. The early October wind had picked up, rattling the windows as Olivia paced the living room barefoot. Her heart pounded with an unfamiliar rhythm. Not panic, not exactly, but something close to adrenaline. Like a fire alarm going off in her soul. Daniel was calculated. Precise. If he'd already drained their accounts, then everything he did from now on would be a move in a game he was planning to win. But he'd underestimated her. Everyone had, really. She pulled out an old shoebox from the top of the closet. It still smelled like cedar and dust, the scent of forgotten things. Inside were fragments of a life she hadn't touched in years. Her old business cards, a passport, receipts from jobs she did before Emma was born, and a sticky note with a scribbled username and password. She sat on the edge of the bed and took a breath before opening her old laptop. The screen took forever to load, the fan groaning as though protesting its sudden resurrection. But when she opened her browser and typed in the URL for the local bank she used to freelance through, the login screen looked unchanged. Outdated, even. She typed in the username. Then the password. Access granted. The balance blinked onto the screen. $23,780.44. Her throat tightened. That account was practically a ghost. Daniel never mentioned it, never cared. Maybe he even forgot it existed. But Olivia hadn't. She stared at the number, thinking, this is it. This is what's left of my freedom. She knew it wouldn't last forever. Rent, food, gas, it would vanish fast. But it could buy her time. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time to disappear before Daniel tried to erase what little was left of her. She didn't hesitate. She transferred every cent to a debit card linked to the account, then scheduled the delivery of a new physical card to a P.O. box she still had in her maiden name, left open out of habit, maybe fate. Then she packed. She moved with focus, not frenzy. A single suitcase. Essentials only. Jeans, a few sweaters, underwear, Emma's baby photo she always kept hidden in a hardcover novel, and a tiny velvet box with her mother's wedding ring. She left behind everything Daniel ever gave her. The diamond necklace, the designer bags, the anniversary bracelet with their wedding date engraved in cursive. All of it sat in their walk-in closet like props in a play that had closed years ago. Downstairs, the house looked just as perfect as always. Spotless kitchen, gray and white decor, throw pillows arranged just so. She stood at the door and took one last look around. The life they built felt staged now, like a showroom that had never been lived in. She slipped out into the night. The gas station was almost empty. A man in a hoodie leaned against the air pump, smoking. Olivia avoided eye contact, filled up her car, and drove toward the interstate without looking back. She didn't have a destination. Just a direction. Away. 3 hours later, she checked into a roadside motel just past the Delaware border. The front desk clerk, a woman in her 50s with a raspy voice and a box of donuts behind the counter, didn't ask questions. Olivia paid in cash and took a room key shaped like a plastic rectangle from the early 2000s. Inside, the room smelled like mildew and old cologne. The floral bedspread looked washed too many times. Olivia didn't care. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in her jeans, and stared at her phone. Messages from Daniel had stopped. 2 texts. That was it. No calls. No hysteria. No begging. It chilled her more than if he had. A knock sounded at the wall next to her. Not her door. Just someone in the next room, maybe slamming a drawer. But it startled her enough to pull her into the present. She opened her bag, pulled out her phone, and began deleting. Photos, messages, call logs, locations. She reset every password she could think of. Email, cloud storage, banking apps, everything. She opened a private browser and looked up the laws around asset division in Connecticut. It was worse than she thought. He had the upper hand in every possible way. She was the one who stayed home. She was the one who didn't fight for a title, a raise, a separate account. In court, she'd be the dependent spouse, the one who needed alimony. The one who'd be questioned for taking money out of fear. But she wasn't scared. Not anymore. She was ahead, for now. As she lay back on the bed, the room spinning just slightly from exhaustion, she thought of Emma. Her daughter was staying the weekend at Daniel's parents' place. Planned weeks ago. Thank God. Olivia didn't want her to see this. Not yet. She would get through this. She didn't know how, or where she was going, but she would. And if Daniel wanted a war, he'd learn the hard way. She didn't lose. She adapted. The morning sunlight slanted through the thin motel curtains, casting lines across Olivia's face as she woke from a restless sleep. Her neck ached from the stiff pillow, her back protested the lumpy mattress, but she was awake, and that meant she was still in control. The first sound she heard was her own breath, shallow and steady. Then the distant hum of trucks rolling past on the highway. She sat up slowly, blinking away the weight of exhaustion. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then the memory returned like a cold wave. The divorce, the drained account, the suitcase beside the bed. She reached for her phone. Still no messages from Daniel. Still no missed calls. He hadn't tried to find her, not yet. She knew it was coming. The silence wasn't mercy. It was strategy. She pulled the debit card from her wallet and stared at it. The $23,780 she transferred was the only tether she had to autonomy now. It wouldn't last long, especially not if she stayed in motels or dined out. She needed a plan, and fast. But before that, she needed a new name. She checked out of the motel before 8 a.m., using a different name at the front desk, Marie Easton. Not a real alias, just something she'd seen on a magazine at the gas station the night before. She paid cash and drove away before the receptionist even looked up from her coffee. At a library 2 towns over, she sat in a cubicle near the back and used a public computer. She looked up small towns in Pennsylvania, places with affordable short-term rentals, places off the radar. She searched for names of women's shelters, freelance job boards, used cars, and post office box services that didn't require a permanent address. She made notes on a napkin. Didn't even want to keep the paper. Every click, every keystroke felt like it left a digital breadcrumb, so she cleared the browser history and shut down the machine. In a quiet corner of the library, she sat with a pen and her journal. It had been years since she wrote anything real. Her thoughts, fears, intentions. But today she did. He thinks he knows me. He thinks I'll wait for the papers, cry into a wine glass, beg for fairness. He doesn't know I've been gone for years. Now I'm just finishing the job. She closed the journal and left the library with a fire burning in her chest. By nightfall, she arrived in a place called Warren, Pennsylvania. One of those forgotten towns where time moved slower and people didn't ask too many questions. The gas was cheap, the grocery store sold off-brand cereal and expired toothpaste, and no one looked twice at a woman driving a 10-year-old car with out-of-state plates. She found a short-term rental, a mother-in-law suite behind a widow's house. The woman, Mrs. Kellerman, was in her late 60s, hard of hearing, and more interested in sharing banana bread recipes than paperwork. Olivia paid her 4 weeks in advance, cash. No name was ever asked for. The suite was small but clean. A kitchenette, a twin bed, a tiny bathroom with cracked tile and a rusted showerhead. The window faced a garden of dead hydrangeas. For now it was perfect. That night, she stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself under the yellow bathroom light. No makeup. Hair tied in a knot. Skin pale and freckled from stress. She was disappearing already. The next morning, she walked into a diner on Main Street. It was the kind of place where time had frozen in 1985. Linoleum floors, peeling red booths, a waitress named Barb with a smoker's cough and a badge that said, "Here since '89. Olivia sat at the counter and ordered coffee. Black. Bob poured it without a word and walked away. Perfect. At the end of the counter was a corkboard covered in local ads. Someone was offering babysitting services. Someone else was selling chickens. And in the middle, a white index card with a thumbtack through the corner. Need help? Typing. Errands. Bookkeeping. Confidential. Ask for Ray. Ray. It sounded anonymous. Kind. Resourceful. Olivia snapped a photo and stuffed the phone in her coat. Over the next hour, she scrolled job boards, updated her LinkedIn with only vague details, and created a new email. liv.easton@gmail.com. Not quite Olivia. Not quite Marie. Something in between. As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. Then came the voicemail. Her hand trembled as she pressed play. Olivia. It's Daniel. I assume you've seen the text. I also assume you've emptied the freelance account. Very smart. I'll make this simple. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. We both know this divorce doesn't have to be messy. I've already spoken to a judge. Call me. Today. Her face flushed. Her chest tightened. But she didn't cry. She deleted the voicemail and blocked the number. She had 23,780 reasons to stay quiet, and one reason to never go back. There's a strange kind of silence that only comes after a seismic shift in your life. Not the immediate chaos of impact, but the deafening quiet of the aftermath. It's what Olivia heard now. She sat cross-legged on the thin mattress of the mother-in-law suite's twin bed, a cold slice of pepperoni pizza in one hand, her phone face down on the nightstand like a bomb she'd disarmed but knew could still go off at any moment. Outside the window, the early October air had gone crisp, and the hydrangeas in Mrs. Kellerman's backyard stood like brittle ghosts, long past their bloom. The sky was a pale wash of gray, and Warren, Pennsylvania, was too quiet for her thoughts. The kind of quiet that turns reflection into confrontation. She hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. She wasn't sure if that made her feel safe or invisible. The money was still there, the full balance untouched since she arrived. She kept checking it, as if expecting it to vanish. But the number hadn't changed. $23,780.44. It stared back at her like a countdown clock she hadn't started yet. She took another bite of the pizza and chewed slowly, barely tasting it. In the mirror above the dresser, she caught her own reflection. She looked like someone else. Not just tired, not just aged, but unwritten. Like she had been erased from who she used to be, and not yet filled in with who she was becoming. She stood and moved closer to the mirror, inspecting the lines around her eyes, the curve of her jaw, the slouch in her shoulders that she hadn't noticed before. A woman with no wedding ring, no job, no clear future. A woman whose child was staying with her father and who had no idea why mommy stopped calling. Olivia pressed her fingers against her temples. Who am I now? It was a question that refused to leave. Later that night, she pulled out a shoebox from her suitcase, the same one she'd taken from the closet that night she left. Inside were fragments of her former life. An old college ID, a wrinkled photo of her and Daniel on their honeymoon in Santa Barbara, a receipt from Emma's first trip to the zoo. She picked up the honeymoon photo. They looked so young. He had a light in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. She had a looseness in her shoulders, a softness in her smile. It was like looking at actors playing roles they didn't fully understand yet. Roles that would harden over time. That would become costumes, then cages. They weren't in love in that photo. Not really. They were in love with the idea of what they could be. She thought of the moments that followed. The slow unraveling. The way Daniel started working late. The way he complimented her less, questioned her more. The passive-aggressive remarks when she bought anything unnecessary. The tension around her wasting time on art projects or taking long showers or doing yoga in the living room while Emma napped. None of it had been obvious. There were no bruises. No slammed doors. Just a gradual erosion of space, of voice, of self. And she let it happen. Because she thought that was what commitment meant. Because she thought he knew best. Because she thought she wasn't enough without him. She leaned back against the wall, the photo still in her hand, and laughed once, bitter and breathless. She had been vanishing long before she packed her suitcase. It was past midnight when she opened her laptop. She typed without thinking, letting the words spill out into a blank document titled simply, Testimony. My name is Olivia Harris. I'm 38 years old. I was married to Daniel Harris for 11 years. I left my life because staying would have meant losing the last pieces of myself I hadn't already given away. She kept going. Paragraph after paragraph. Not for court. Not for revenge. For herself. A record. A confession. A declaration. She wrote about the emotional silence, the manipulation masked as protection, the way he twisted logic until she questioned her sanity. She wrote about motherhood, about the ache of feeling unseen, about how financial dependence becomes a leash disguised as love. She wrote until the screen blurred and the letters smeared from her tears. When she finished, it was almost 3 a.m. She saved the document onto a USB stick, then printed a copy at a 24-hour store downtown, just in case. She folded it neatly, slipped it into an envelope, and sealed it. The front read, If anything happens to me, give this to Emma. The following morning, she took a walk. The streets of Warren were hushed, fog curling along the edges of the sidewalks. She passed closed antique shops, a darkened barber shop with striped poles still spinning, and a coffee shop that opened its doors just as she approached. The smell of fresh ground beans made her stomach growl, but she didn't go inside. Instead, she stood across the street and watched the people filter in. Locals. Small-town people who had never needed to vanish, who had never measured survival in dollars and silence. A part of her envied them. Another part wanted to be one of them. Back at the rental, she received a text from a new number. Just a local Pennsylvania area code and one line. Is this Liv Easton? Got your name from Ray. I need help with some paperwork. Cash paid. She stared at the screen. A job. A test. She smiled for the first time in days. The walls weren't closing in. They were falling away. The house sat at the edge of a long gravel road, just far enough from town to feel like it belonged to another century. 2 stories of chipped white siding, a wraparound porch with rusting railings, and a pair of stone lion statues guarding the front steps like relics of a more arrogant past. Olivia pulled up in her car, heart pounding louder than the hum of the engine. This was it. Her first job since she disappeared. The man who contacted her, David Royce, was vague in his text. Need help sorting and digitizing some old records for my dad's estate. Nothing fancy. Paid cash. It was the kind of gig that didn't ask for resumes or background checks. It was also the kind of gig where people might ask questions about your name. And for the first time, Olivia wasn't answering as Olivia Harris. She was Liv Easton now. She killed the engine, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, pulled her hair back tighter. Less softness, more sharpness. Less wife on the run, more no-nonsense temp worker. As she approached the house, the front door creaked open. A man in his early 40s stepped onto the porch. He wore a black hoodie, jeans, and a subtle limp in his right leg. His expression wasn't unfriendly, just tired. The kind of tired Olivia recognized. "Liv?" he asked. She nodded. "You must be David." He gestured for her to follow him inside. "Watch your step." The floorboards near the kitchen bite. The interior of the house was chaos disguised as heritage. Stacks of yellowed paper, half-opened boxes, old furniture draped in plastic. It smelled like dust and cedar, and there was a heaviness in the air, like the place had spent years collecting secrets and never aired them out. David led her to what must have once been a dining room. Now it was a war zone of filing cabinets, cardboard boxes, and scattered legal pads. "Dad was a lawyer," he explained, clearing a chair for her. "Real old school. Kept everything on paper. When he passed, he left me all this. I need it scanned, sorted. Just enough to give the estate attorney something clean to work with." Olivia nodded. "No problem. I've done archival work before." She hadn't. But she knew how to alphabetize, categorize, and work a scanner. And that was enough. "I pay cash. End of each day," he said, looking at her for a beat too long. "You good with that?" "Definitely." She started slow, building a rhythm. Pick up a document. Read it. Determine if it was trash or treasure. Sort into folders labeled with masking tape and Sharpie. Financials. Clients, open. Clients, closed. Personal, unknown. As she worked, she listened to the creaks of the house. David stayed mostly in the back room, working on something of his own. Occasionally, he'd pass through and refill her mug with fresh coffee, or offer her a donut from a pink box he kept near the window. He didn't ask questions. He didn't comment on the fact that she used only her first name, or that her Pennsylvania ID looked brand new. By the third hour, Olivia was actually enjoying the work. There was something almost therapeutic about bringing order to chaos, especially when her own life still felt like a shattered mirror. Then she found the envelope. It was buried under a stack of unpaid property taxes. Thick. Sealed. No label on the front. She hesitated. Glanced toward the hallway. Listened. Then opened it. Inside was a cashier's check. $9,000. Dated 8 months ago. Made out to Olivia Harris. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't hers. It couldn't be. But the name, her name, was printed there, clear as daylight. Her fingers trembled as she turned the envelope over. Inside was a letter. Handwritten in tight cursive. She skimmed it quickly. For services rendered. Final payment. No contact beyond this point. J.R. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Who was J.R.? Why her name? Was it a coincidence? She checked the envelope again. The letterhead was a local law office, defunct for years. She shoved the envelope back inside and slid it deep into the personal file, fingers shaking. She didn't know what she'd just found, but something told her this job wasn't the safe, quiet gig it seemed. When David returned at the end of the day with her cash in an envelope, he didn't mention anything unusual. Just handed her the money, nodded once and said, "Good work." She tried to keep her voice steady. "Thanks. Same time tomorrow." He nodded again. "If you want it." Outside, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Olivia leaned against her car and stared at the money in her hand. $120. Enough for groceries and gas. But the real value today wasn't the cash. It was the question. Who knew her name? And how far had her past really followed her? That night, in her suite, she placed the check beside her laptop. She didn't dare search the law office's name yet. Not until she figured out how to do it without leaving a trace. But she knew this. Warren wasn't just a place to hide anymore. It had its own secrets. And somehow, she'd stepped right into them. Olivia barely slept. The envelope with the cashier's check stayed on her nightstand, untouched, unopened again, but impossible to ignore. She lay there long after midnight, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, the sounds of the quiet town drifting through the cracked window, a train in the distance, the low hum of power lines, the occasional bark of a dog too far away to be comforting. She felt it in her chest, a pressure, a presence. It wasn't just the check. It was the way the air had shifted around her life since arriving in Warren. Like she had stepped into something without knowing it. Like she had picked a lock that was never meant to be touched. By morning, her instincts were no longer whispering. They were screaming. She didn't tell David about the check when she arrived for her second day of work. He greeted her with the same tired eyes, the same unspoken grief, and handed her a new stack of folders to sort. The system she built yesterday was still intact, but today, she added one more category. Anomalies. By noon, she had 3 documents in that folder, all referencing payments to people with names she didn't recognize. All signed with the initials JR. The same handwriting. The same formal tone. Whatever his father had been involved in, it wasn't just legal work. And Olivia wasn't sure how much David knew, or wanted to know. Around 2 p.m., she stepped outside for some air. The fall breeze had turned colder, and the wind pulled at the edges of her coat. She sat on the front porch steps with a cup of coffee, watching the leaves swirl along the gravel road like tiny brown dancers with nowhere to be. That's when she saw the truck. Old Ford. Faded blue. Mud on the tires and a dented bumper. It wasn't moving fast, but it wasn't crawling either. Just slow enough to say I'm not in a hurry. But I'm looking. The driver was a man. Baseball cap pulled low, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near his mouth as if he were thinking, or hiding. Olivia couldn't see his face clearly. Just the feeling that lingered behind the windshield. He drove past without stopping. But his eyes met hers through the glass. Just for a second. And then he was gone. She didn't move. Not right away. Just sat there, breath caught in her throat. The truck didn't belong to anyone in town. She was sure of it. She had already started recognizing faces. A glance at license plates. Habits. Patterns. This one broke all of them. She stood up, went back inside, and locked the door. That night, she drove to a diner 3 towns over, just to shake the feeling. It was the kind of place where the menu hadn't changed in 20 years, and the waitress refilled your cup before you even asked. She sat in the back booth, facing the window. Her laptop open, but nothing typed. Just the check beside her. The name staring up like a trap. Olivia Harris. How did it end up in that house? And more importantly, what if it wasn't the past catching up? What if it was a setup? When she got back to the rental, there was something waiting. A note, slipped under the door. Small. Folded once. She hesitated before picking it up. Live. Don't trust the sun. Watch the truck. Leave now or learn the hard way. Ah. She read it twice. Then a third time. No signature. No return address. Just that single trembling line. Watch the truck. The same truck that passed her on the road that afternoon. She locked every window. Closed the blinds. Pulled the dresser in front of the door. Her heart thudding like a war drum. But she didn't run. She sat in the dark, back against the wall, phone in hand. And for the first time since leaving her marriage, she felt something that wasn't fear. It was anger. Not at the man in the truck. Not at David. Not even at Daniel. It was anger at herself. For thinking she could disappear so easily. At 3:17 a.m., unable to sleep, she connected to her phone's hotspot and searched the initials JR plus Warren, Pennsylvania plus lawyer. Nothing useful. Then she added, David Roy's father obituary. She found it. A short article in the local paper from 6 months ago. Warren County mourns John Royce, 67, local attorney. It listed charities. Military service. No surviving spouse. Only David, described as semi-retired after a construction injury. She scrolled further. One photo. A younger David beside his father. In the background, the same Ford truck. Olivia stared at the screen. It wasn't just a stranger passing by. The man in the truck had been part of the Royce family. Or still was. As dawn broke over Warren, Olivia sat on her bed, fully dressed, a go-bag packed by the door. Her phone was charged. Her gas tank full. Her laptop loaded with documents she hadn't read yet. And the check, now scanned, hidden, encrypted in the cloud. She wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Because now, She had a new question. What did Olivia Harris do that made someone write her name on a $9,000 check? And more importantly, what if she wasn't just running from her past? What if she had been chosen to take someone else's place? Olivia sat at the small wooden desk in her motel room, the curtains drawn tight against the early morning light. The coffee beside her had gone cold. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard as the same thought looped through her head. Don't trust the sun. The note hadn't been written in haste. The handwriting was deliberate, neat. Like whoever wrote it wanted her to believe it. Or maybe they just wanted to scare her. Either way, the seed was planted. And now it was growing. At 9:06 a.m., Olivia pulled into the Royce house as usual, wearing a calm expression she didn't feel. David was already outside, a hammer in hand, patching up one of the porch steps. He smiled as she stepped out of the car. "You're early." "Couldn't sleep," she said, matching his tone. He nodded. "Yeah. This place does that to people." She followed him inside, noting the truck wasn't in the driveway. Maybe it had never left the garage. Maybe David had driven it himself. Or maybe someone else in the family still had the keys. She didn't ask. Not yet. Today, she needed him relaxed. Inside, the rhythm was the same. Folders, coffee, the hum of the scanner. But Olivia's eyes moved faster now. Not just reading. Analyzing. Connecting. Trying to understand why every other folder now felt like a message written in code. And that's when she found the photo. It was slipped between two legal contracts. Slightly curled. A black and white print of three men standing in front of a cabin. All in their 30s, holding beers. One of them she didn't recognize. Another was clearly David. And the third. Her stomach dropped. It was Daniel. Her husband. Younger. Leaner. Wearing a beanie. But it was him. There was no question. She stared at the photo like it might change if she blinked. David. Daniel. And one more man. Probably J.R. She flipped the picture over. Faded ink scrawled across the back. July 2015. Cabin weekend. D.R.J. Her fingers trembled. She shoved the photo deep into her pocket. By lunchtime, she had made her decision. She asked David if he had a spare box she could take back to the motel. One full of documents to scan after hours. "Just trying to speed things up," she said with a tired smile. He hesitated. Then nodded. "Sure. You're careful." She carried the box out herself. Heavy with old paper and older secrets. Back in her room, she closed the door, drew the blinds, and started pulling the contents apart piece by piece. Inside were mostly financial records, estate plans, a few medical forms, nothing overtly strange. Until she reached the manila folder at the bottom. Unlabeled. Inside, a thin packet of papers and a yellow sticky note on top. "For our only. Destroy after reading." She took a deep breath and pulled out the documents. The first page was a contract, or something like one. Dated 2016. Signed only by Daniel Harris. And then she saw the clause that made her blood run cold. In exchange for the financial restructuring of holdings described herein, the undersigned agrees to indemnify and protect the private interests of Mr. John Royce and his estate, even in the event of legal separation from his spouse. Spouse. Her. She kept reading. The entire document described a complicated financial maneuver. Daniel had essentially funneled money into a blind trust linked to Royce's firm. Money that came from their joint holdings. Her inheritance. Their savings. Even her parents' property. She was never listed by name, only as the spouse. But now it was clear. Daniel had made a deal behind her back. With David's father. And then divorced her to make sure she couldn't claim it. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated theft, sealed in legal armor. And the check made sense now. It was a bribe. Or maybe a payoff. A way to clean up the mess before she could ever find out. But something had gone wrong. John Royce had died. And the paperwork had been buried. Until she found it. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. But then, a new thought. If David is involved, why let me near any of this? Unless he didn't know. Unless he was being used too. Or, he was watching her. Waiting to see what she'd find. Either way, the line between victim and conspirator was dissolving fast. That night, Olivia didn't sleep. She made 3 copies of everything. One on a USB, one on her cloud backup, and one printed, folded, sealed in an envelope. She mailed that last one to a P.O. box she had set up under another fake name, just in case she disappeared. At 5:38 a.m., she got into her car and drove to the edge of the forest where the road forked. She sat there, engine running. A choice ahead. Run now, and be safe. Or stay, and uncover the rest. She opened the glove box. The photo was still there. Daniel. David. J.R. 3 men. 1 secret. And a woman who had been left in the dark far too long. Olivia put the car in reverse. Turned around. She was done running. The next morning, Olivia wore her mask. The one with the soft smile. The measured steps. The steady voice. Inside she was wired tight, a live current just beneath her skin, but she knew better than to let it show. Not yet. She parked behind the Royce house just after 8 a.m., careful to scan the street for the truck. It wasn't there. David was on the back porch, sipping coffee. He didn't see her at first, lost in thought, shoulders slumped like a man worn out by memories. She watched him for a moment. Tried to match this version. Quiet, soft-spoken, grieving, with the man in the photo beside Daniel. Nothing fit. Finally, she stepped forward. Morning. He turned, startled, then smiled. You're early again. She shrugged. Habit. Want help with anything before I go inside? Nah. Just finishing my coffee. Go on in. She nodded and went inside. But she didn't go straight to the office. Instead, she went upstairs. The second floor had remained off-limits since she started. David had told her there was nothing up there but dust, and she pretended to believe him. But today, she didn't care. She moved quickly, quietly. The staircase creaked once. She paused, breath held. No footsteps behind her. Then she reached the top. 4 doors. All closed. The hallway smelled faintly of cedar and old books. She opened the first door, a guest bedroom, stripped bare except for a mattress and a collapsed cardboard box. The second, storage, filled with crates labeled in David's handwriting. The third, locked. And the fourth? It was a study. Dim light filtered through dusty curtains. On the desk, a photo in a cracked frame. John Royce shaking hands with a senator she recognized from the news. A bookshelf filled with law journals. A globe. A drawer slightly ajar. She opened it. Inside, a single key and a folded piece of paper. The key was labeled, Storage, 1357, in faded pen. The paper was older, the folds crisp with time. She unfolded it. And froze. It was a copy of a birth certificate. The name on it wasn't hers. Or David's. Rebecca and Harris. Born 1990. Mother. Olivia Harris. Father. Unknown. Olivia stumbled backward. Breath caught in her throat. She didn't have a daughter. At least, she didn't think she did. But there it was. Her name. Her handwriting on the signature line. She dropped the paper as if it burned her and backed out of the room. Downstairs, David was standing in the kitchen, watching her. She hadn't made a sound, but something in his eyes told her he already knew where she'd been. You look like you saw a ghost, he said softly. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. Upstairs. Still nothing. So he sighed. I figured you'd go up eventually. She narrowed her eyes. Then why leave the key? The birth certificate. He didn't blink. Because I wanted to see what you'd do when you found it. And? His voice was lower now. I wanted to see if you'd lie about it. Silence stretched between them. Olivia clenched her jaw. I don't know what this is, David. That paper. It's not real. I never had a child. Someone's setting me up. Maybe, he said. Or maybe someone made you forget. That hit her like a slap. Her vision blurred for a second. Her legs nearly gave out. He moved to steady her, but she pulled away. You don't get to touch me, she hissed. Not until you tell me what the hell is going on. David's jaw tightened. You think I know everything, Olivia? I'm as deep in this as you are. Maybe deeper. My father left me this mess, and I've been trying to figure it out since the day he died. She searched his face. There was pain there. Real or not, she couldn't tell. What's the truck, David? Who was driving it? His expression changed. Just for a second. Then the walls went back up. I don't know, he said. Too quickly. Don't lie to me. I'm not. But if you saw it, then you need to know something. He stepped closer. That truck belonged to my uncle. He died 8 years ago. She stared at him, pulse in her ears. Then who's driving it? He didn't answer. But his silence said enough. That night, Olivia sat in her car with the key she had found. Storage. 1357. She looked up the address. A facility 2 miles outside of town. Private. Gated. Open 24/7 with code access. She drove there with the windows down and the radio off. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She pulled up to the gate and entered the code scrawled in faded ink on the bottom of the key. The gate creaked open. Unit 1357 was near the back. She parked, heart pounding, hands slick against the steering wheel. Then got out. The unit's lock was old but intact. The key slid in smoothly. The door rolled up with a heavy groan. Darkness. She reached inside, found the light switch, and froze as the fluorescent lights flickered on. Inside was a single wooden chair, a file cabinet, and pinned to the far wall, photographs of her, in her apartment, at the grocery store, leaving Daniel's office, photos from before the divorce, and after, dozens of them, all dated, catalogued, watched. This hadn't started when she came to Warren. This had been going on for years. Her breath caught in her chest. And then she saw it, on the back of one photo. A handwritten note. She doesn't remember. Keep it that way. Olivia backed out of the unit and slammed the door shut. Her hands shook as she locked it again, her brain spinning faster than her body could follow. Who was watching her? Why? And what the hell had they made her forget? Back in her motel room, she stared at the birth certificate again. Rebecca and Harris. That would make her 35. Only 4 years younger than Olivia herself. It wasn't possible. Unless Rebecca wasn't her daughter, but her sister. Her twin? The thought made her knees buckle. Her clone? No. That was absurd. This was real life. Not fiction. But then again, none of this felt like life anymore. It felt like control. And Olivia was tired of being the one controlled. The motel hallway was silent as Olivia walked down to the front desk, the envelope with the birth certificate in hand. It was 3:14 a.m., and the vending machine was the only sound she could hear, humming faintly behind the wall like some tired machine exhaling in its sleep. Janice, the night manager, sat behind the counter reading a paperback romance. She looked up, startled, when Olivia appeared. You all right, hun? Olivia nodded, forcing calm. Just need to ask about someone. Janice raised an eyebrow. Someone causing trouble? No. Just the woman in room 12. She's been here a while, right? Janice blinked. Room 12's been occupied, yeah. Why? Can I talk to her? Janice hesitated. That's not really. She left this at the desk yesterday, Olivia lied, holding up the envelope. I think it's important. A pause. Then a slow nod. She's a little strange. Keeps to herself. Doesn't let housekeeping in. But sure, go on. Olivia made her way down the hall, past faded carpet and buzzing lights, until she stood in front of room 12. She knocked. Nothing. She knocked again. Firmer. Still silence. She was about to give up when the lock turned. The door opened 2 inches. And there she was. The woman was in her late 30s, with deep-set eyes and a face that looked carved from stone. Her hair was a dark chestnut, slightly tangled. She wore a robe over jeans. No makeup. No emotion. Who are you? The woman asked flatly. Olivia held up the envelope. You left this. The woman didn't look down. No, I didn't. You know my name? Olivia asked. A pause. Then the woman's voice softened, barely audible. Yes. The door opened fully. Come in. The room smelled of incense and coffee and dust. On the small table by the window were piles of newspaper clippings, photos, and folders. Dozens of them. Maps, diagrams, crossed-out names, notes in a tight, aggressive script. Olivia stared, stunned. The woman sat down without offering her a seat. "You've been looking for answers," she said. Olivia nodded. "You're going to give them to me." A bitter laugh. "I'll give you what I can. But you won't like it. Try me." The woman leaned back. "My name's Margot Banks. I was a nurse. Psychiatric ward. State Hospital in Tallahassee. 2006 to 2013. Olivia frowned. "I don't understand. You were my patient." Silence. Everything inside Olivia froze. "No," she whispered. "No, I wasn't." "Yes. You were admitted under a different name. No family listed. No history. Just you and a collection of documents that didn't match. You stayed 2 years. Then vanished." "That's not true," Olivia said. "That's not." "I didn't believe it at first either," Margot interrupted. "But then I saw you again. On a billboard. For Harris Legal. You'd gotten married. Changed everything. But I recognized your eyes. The way you held your hand when you were nervous." She reached into a folder and pulled out a photo. A younger Olivia. In a hospital gown. Sitting on a bench. Vacant stare. "My name is Olivia Harris," she said firmly. "I'm from Connecticut. I went to Rutgers. I was married for 8 years. My father." "Your memories were built," Margot said quietly. "They gave you a backstory. A solid one. Bank accounts. Digital trails. Social media. Photos. All planted. Because you needed to believe it." Olivia's stomach twisted. "Why?" Margot's eyes darkened. "Because you knew something they needed you to forget. You were part of something. Something tied to John Royce's research fund. Something illegal. People got hurt. You tried to blow the whistle. And then? Then what? They made you disappear." Olivia stepped back, heart pounding, hands trembling. "This is insane. I remember my wedding. My family. My childhood. Do you remember 2009? Margot cut in. "What job did you have? Where were you living?" Olivia opened her mouth. But no words came. Because nothing came. Not a single memory from that year. "Look inside," Margot whispered. "How many holes are there?" Olivia's legs gave out and she sank into the only chair. "I found the storage unit," she said. "The photos. The file cabinet. The birth certificate." "Rebecca." Margot nodded. "They tested the memory protocols on twins. You and her were part of a trial. She didn't survive. But you." "I became a ghost," Olivia said, her voice barely audible. Margot leaned forward. "You want the truth? Go to the woods north of Warren. There's a house there. Burned out. It's off the grid. That's where they kept the originals. Before the files were transferred to Royce's office." Olivia blinked. "Originals. Files. Footage. Medical logs. Names. It's all there. Why haven't you gone?" "I'm being watched," Margot said. "But you've been let in. You're the one they never expected to come back." That night, Olivia drove. The road narrowed the farther she went, gravel crunching under her tires, the trees closing in like ribs around a heart that had stopped beating. She reached the property at 1:43 a.m. The gate was rusted, sagging, bent from years of wind and weather. She parked and walked through the trees. The house stood like a ghost itself, half-burned, windows broken, door off the hinges. Moonlight spilled through the trees in slivers. Inside, the air was heavy with ash. She stepped carefully, listening. Every creak of the floor was a drumbeat in her chest. Then, in the basement, a door. Metal. Sealed. With a code pad. She stared at it. Her hand moved without thinking. And entered 6 digits. 092681. Her birthday. The door clicked open. Inside. Shelves. Steel drawers. Files. Boxes marked with a strange symbol. A triangle inside a circle. She pulled one open. Inside, a cassette tape. A label in that same handwriting she'd seen on the note in the storage unit. Olivia Unit Number 3. Do not play outside secure zone. Property of Royce Initiative. She picked it up and heard something behind her. Footsteps. The cassette in Olivia's hands felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of years of memory, of identity. Behind her, the sound of footsteps grew louder. Measured. Unhurried. She spun around, clutching the tape like a weapon. And there he was. David. Soaked in sweat. Shirt wrinkled. Eyes dark. He didn't look surprised. I figured you'd come here, he said. How did you find me? She snapped. You used the same birth date for the code, he said calmly. I guessed. You're not as hidden as you think. Her grip tightened. You lied to me. I didn't lie, he said. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. He stepped forward. Olivia, listen to me. If you play that tape, everything changes. You can't unhear what's on it. I want the truth. David looked pained. You don't. She narrowed her eyes. Tell me what happened to Rebecca. He hesitated. Then, Rebecca didn't die. Not right away. But the trial, the one Margot told you about, it broke her. What kind of trial? He swallowed. It wasn't medical, not really. It was cognitive control. Memory partitioning. Royce wanted to find a way to split memory into compartments, to make someone remember only what they were told to. She froze. You're saying, someone rewrote my life. He nodded. Over and over again. Why me? You volunteered. At first. You were desperate. Homeless. You didn't know who you were when they found you in Miami in 2008. They gave you a name, a story. You asked them to. She laughed bitterly. So I chose to forget? Yes, David said. But then, they didn't stop. She stared at the tape in her hand. Then moved to the old player on the shelf. Slid it in. David lunged. Olivia, don't. Click. The room filled with static. Then a voice. Her voice. Session 19. Subject Harris. Olivia. Or Unit Number 3, as she's referred to in the logs. Emotional regression is showing promising signs. Today, she recalled a false childhood involving a Labrador and a house in Rhode Island. We never gave her either. That memory is hers. Created spontaneously from the blanks we left behind. Proof that the mind will fill the vacuum. Olivia's breath hitched. Subject appears to trust David, the handler assigned to her under the legal assistant persona. The bond is stable. She seeks his approval. His presence calms her during destabilization cycles. She turned slowly. David didn't move. You were part of this, she said. He nodded once. At the start. I didn't know what they were doing to you. You were my handler. He flinched. It wasn't like that. What was it like? He didn't answer. So she hit play again. Subject is beginning to question the timeline. Intervention scheduled. If memory deviation reaches phase 3, we initiate reset using sequence 9. If that fails, removal. Removal. Olivia echoed, her voice hollow. They didn't mean kill, David said quickly. Just full erasure. She shook her head. You're saying they were going to wipe me clean. Again. He nodded. I should hate you, she said. I know. And then for the first time, he broke. I tried to leave, he said. But they threatened my sister. My real one. They keep leverage. On everyone. They own cops, judges, tech companies. Royce built a network that doesn't show up on any map. And when you started remembering things that didn't fit, they sent me to bring you back. But I ran. He nodded. And I let you go. Olivia turned the tape off. Silence. The basement felt colder now. More narrow. More dangerous. What's left here? She asked. What haven't I seen? David reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded blueprint. The house had a lower sublevel. Royce used it for the real archives. It was sealed after the fire, but the walls don't go all the way down. They moved as a pair now, uneasy allies in a war neither of them fully understood. In the back corner of the room, David knocked aside shelving to reveal a crumbling panel. Behind it, stairs, steep and slick with age. They descended with only a flashlight between them. The air was heavier, staler. And then they reached a vault-like door. David pulled out a second key. "You still had that?" Olivia asked. "I stole it the day Royce died," he said. "Didn't even know why." He turned the key. The lock opened with a hiss. Inside, rows of metal drawers. Files. Tapes. Laptops. Even syringes, preserved in cases. Olivia walked to the first drawer. Opened it. Harris. Rebecca. Phase 2 termination. She opened the file. There were pictures of her face. Bruised, terrified. Medical notes. Electrical readouts. Subject rejected final memory stack. Attempted to break through protocol. Terminated. She clutched the edge of the drawer to stay standing. She turned to the next cabinet. Harris. Olivia. Unit number 3. Status. Active. More papers. Session 1. Volunteer intake. Session 7. Personality rebuild V.2. Session 13. Marriage simulation. Session 20. Handler deviation risk. David closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said again. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "There's no me left, is there? No real Olivia." He stepped closer. "There is," he said softly. "You're standing right here. That's the only truth that matters now." She didn't cry. Not then. She looked around. At the ashes of her past. At the carefully documented destruction of her life. At the man who helped build it. And made a decision. "We burn it," she said. David blinked. "What?" "We burn this whole place. Tonight. Before they know we found it. Before they can erase me again." He hesitated. "You'll be marked for life." "I already am." He nodded once. Then they began gathering papers, pulling drawers, dousing the floor with the gas cans from the shed outside. As the flames caught and the smoke rose, Olivia stood by the gate and didn't look back. Not this time. By sunrise, they were gone. The fire was blamed on vandals. Nothing was reported stolen. No investigation was launched. And Olivia, or whoever she truly was, went silent. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. Because the tape she didn't burn. She had mailed to 3 journalists. Anonymous. She was going to bring it all down. Even if it killed her. The bus was half empty, humming low as it moved along a stretch of highway somewhere in Pennsylvania. Olivia sat near the back, sunglasses on, a duffel bag at her feet, one hand clutching a burner phone, the other pressed flat against the window. It had been 5 days since she'd lit her past on fire. And in those 5 days, she hadn't slept more than a few hours at a time. Not because she couldn't. But because her mind wouldn't let her. Memories or fragments of them came at odd angles now. Not like film reels, smooth and edited. But like glass shards. Jagged. Sharp. Out of order. A beach. Her mother's perfume, or someone who claimed to be her mother. A locked room. A question repeated over and over. A white light. David had dropped her at a gas station in New Jersey. He didn't say goodbye. Just handed her a flash drive and told her, "If they find you again, make sure someone else knows the truth." She hadn't opened it yet. Not because she was afraid of what was on it. But because she wasn't sure she could handle more truths. She got off the bus in Cleveland, where nobody knew her name. Checked into a cheap motel under Rebecca Young. A name she'd pulled from a birth certificate found in the basement archive. Fake, but close enough to real. The girl at the counter didn't look twice. Inside her room, Olivia pulled the curtains closed, set her phone to airplane mode, and opened her laptop. No social media. No cloud backups. No email accounts. She created everything from scratch. Alias emails, encrypted notes, offline folders. She was rebuilding herself the way they had once done. But this time, she was in control. Each night, she listened to the cassette tapes she'd stolen, the ones not marked for destruction. Margot had been right. They were more than data. They were confessions, experiments, monologues of men who thought they were gods. Subject shows increased empathy when memory is linked to animals. Recommend inserting dog ownership into backstory during next rebuild. Royce has requested we test simultaneous personality threads. Olivia is scheduled for dual stack simulation. Handler number 2 terminated after attachment interfered with control. Emotional bonds must remain one-sided. She filled a wall with notes, string, photos, her own conspiracy board. Names she remembered hearing in whispers. Places she vaguely recalled. A townhouse in Baltimore. A rehab facility in New Mexico. A name she scribbled in a dream. Dr. N. Sutcliffe. She circled that one in red. Then on the 8th night, a knock at her motel door. 3 slow taps. She froze. Heart hammering. No one should know she was here. She crept to the peephole. No one. Then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. I left something for you. In the vending machine. Bottom slot. Gone again. She opened the door carefully. The hallway was empty. She walked quickly to the vending machine, looked in the lowest snack slot, the one marked G10. Instead of candy, there was a folded piece of paper sealed with red tape. She pried it loose and returned to her room. Unfolded it. It read, "You have 48 hours. They know where you are. Use the name Miller. Find Dr. Sutcliffe. Do not contact David. He's compromised." There was no signature. Just a black triangle drawn by hand. The name Miller burned itself into her thoughts. She searched local registries. Obituaries. Academic records. Nothing concrete. Until she checked an old news archive. University press releases from 2011. There it was. Dr. Naomi Sutcliffe awarded grant for neurocognitive ethics research under the Miller Foundation. Olivia sat back. That was it. That was the missing thread. She'd been chasing the program. But the program had been funded by something bigger. The Miller Foundation. She now had 2 options. Stay hidden. Or go to the last known address of Dr. Naomi Sutcliffe. In Durham, North Carolina. She chose the second. She stole a car. Not out of malice. Just survival. And drove for 10 hours straight. Durham was quiet when she arrived. Late morning haze rising off rooftops. University students on bikes. Moms with strollers. The kind of normalcy that made her skin itch. She pulled up to the address listed in the faculty directory. It was a church. Abandoned. A massive, once beautiful cathedral with stained glass cracked and ivy climbing up the stone. On the rusted gate, a new sign. Closed for renovation. Trespassing strictly prohibited. But Olivia didn't hesitate. She slipped through the side gate and into the building. Dust coated everything. Light filtered through broken panes like fractured memory. Then she saw it. A small brass plaque on the floor by the altar. In memory of Naomi Sutcliffe. 1962 to 2023. A lie. A warning? Something creaked behind her. She turned. A man stood in the far hallway. Older. Scarred. Eyes alert. He didn't look surprised to see her. "Miss Harris," he said softly. "We've been waiting for you." The man who greeted Olivia inside the old cathedral was tall, stoic, mid-60s. His skin was pale, his hair silver. He had a faded tattoo on his right hand. A geometric triangle filled with numbers. And he walked with a slight limp, like someone who had been running his entire life and finally got caught by time. "My name is Elias Merrick," he said. "I was Royce's architect. For a time." Olivia didn't move. "You know who I am." "I knew what you were," he corrected. "The woman you are now. I don't think Royce would recognize her." He gestured toward a hallway beyond the altar. "You came here for answers." "I have some." She followed. The hallway led into what used to be a sacristy, now converted into a makeshift war room. Maps. Monitors. Hard drives stacked in towers. Handwritten notebooks labeled in code. A wall covered in photos. Victims. Subjects. Handlers. Some faces she recognized, including herself. "You ran the program?" she asked. "No," Elias said. "I designed it. Royce ran it. There's a difference." She crossed her arms. "That's like saying the man who built the cage isn't responsible for the bird inside." He didn't argue. I warned them, he said. When Royce pitched the memory stack protocol, I told him it was dangerous. The mind is not a database. It doesn't delete cleanly. It bleeds. He walked to a shelf, pulled a folder, handed it to her. Inside were medical scans, brain activity under stress. Notes written in red ink. Subject, Unit 3. Internal conflict detected. Memory stacks overlapping. Paranoia increasing. Dream state bleeding into conscious recall. Olivia traced her fingers over the margins. This is me. He nodded. The moment your subconscious started rejecting the lie. And you let it happen. I tried to stop it, Elias said. But by then, the funding had changed. Royce didn't answer to researchers anymore. He answered to buyers. Buyers. Elias tapped a keyboard. The screen showed a redacted document titled, Second Phase Initiative, Shoreline. He opened another. Shoreline is not a therapy. It is an inoculation. Memory programming tailored for elite operatives, political assets, and corporate security. Ethical oversight removed under Section 8 clearance. Full launch scheduled Q3 FI 2026. Olivia felt a chill crawl up her spine. They're starting again. He nodded. But not in facilities, he said. Not in basements. This time it's software. Embedded in wellness apps. Sleep therapy programs. Digital assistants. AI learning tools. They don't need clinics anymore. Just phones. She felt dizzy. You're telling me there are people out there right now, running on altered threads? Yes, he said. And most of them don't even know it. She sat down slowly. How do I stop it? You don't, Elias said quietly. Not by yourself. Then help me. He looked at her for a long time. Then he opened a drawer and took out a small drive, encrypted, marked with a serial number she recognized from the basement lab. Royce's personal archive. Everything he had on Phase 1. Including your files. If we leak this, we might stall Shoreline. Might. Depends on how cleanly they buried the chain of command. Olivia looked at the drive. And what do you get out of this? Elias smiled faintly. Redemption is a fool's errand. But exposure? That I can live with. They spent the next 8 hours copying data, labeling files, assembling packets for release. They used burner devices, private connections, and old activist networks once used by whistleblowers. Each step, Olivia grew more silent. Focused. Cold. By dawn, the packets were sent to 5 journalists. 1 in Berlin. 1 in New York. 1 in Sao Paulo. 1 in Tokyo. 1 in Nairobi. Within minutes, the first signal went dark. That's fast, Elias said grimly. Means they're watching. Olivia backed up the data again. We need to move. But it was already too late. From the front of the cathedral, a flash of light. Then, boom. The windows shattered inward. The building shook. Elias threw her to the ground just as another blast rocked the east wing. Smoke. Fire. The sharp whistle of drones overhead. They're here, he coughed. Go. What about you? I'll slow them down. She started to protest, but he shoved a small key into her hand. Locker. Union Station. Locker 209. The second part of the archive is there. It's how we kill this thing. Elias. He didn't let her finish. Go now, Olivia. Don't let them write over you again. She ran. She didn't look back. By nightfall, she was back on the road. A different name. A different burner. And the key in her pocket, burning like a live coal. But her mind wasn't on safety. It was on what she saw in Elias's notes before the explosion. A final file. Label. Unit 6. Active. Target unstable / tracking required. Attached was a photo. Taken 2 days earlier. It was David. She arrived at Union Station in D.C. just before sunrise, wrapped in a hoodie, no makeup, carrying a backpack that didn't look like it belonged to her. Locker 209 was tucked behind a dim hallway near the restrooms, where no one paid attention to shadows. The key clicked into the lock. She held her breath. Inside was a single manila envelope and a hard plastic case. On the case, handle with isotemp gloves only. She didn't know what that meant. But she took them both. Rented a car under a fake name. Drove to an empty parking lot near a closed-down department store in Arlington. Then opened the envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter, a photograph, and a thumb drive. She unfolded the letter. The handwriting was David's. If you're reading this, they haven't gotten to you yet. Or they have, and this was part of their plan. Hard to tell anymore. I never meant for you to remember. That was the first lie I told myself. The truth? I broke protocol. The first time you came through the program, I let you go. The second time, I embedded a failsafe. I thought I was doing the right thing. But you always came back. Like a wound that wouldn't close. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if you should. But what's on this drive is the key to everything. Not just your cycle, but the next generation. The part even Elias didn't know. They called it Project Calico. And it starts with you. She blinked. Reread it. Then looked at the photo. Her and David. But not recent. Not fake. Before the program. She looked different. Happier, younger, real. And he looked human. Not tired. Not calculating. They had known each other before the first version. Before Royce. Before Margot. Before everything. And then it clicked. She hadn't been recruited. She'd been volunteered. The drive didn't work on her laptop. It required a cold reader, the kind that could extract raw, unfiltered system logs. The kind used by Royce's original lab. And she knew where the last one might be. A decommissioned facility outside Langley, under a fake medical name, Blackridge Sleep Optimization Center. It had been shut down in 2021. Or so the record said. She parked a mile away and hiked through the woods. The building was still there. Gated, half covered in vines, but intact. Cameras gone. Electricity cut. Just ruins. She entered through a broken window. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Deep. Oppressive. The kind that absorbs thoughts. Then the smell. Sterile. Cold. Faint metal. Like memory itself had a scent. She passed through old rooms, treatment beds, shattered monitors, blacked-out two-way mirrors. Found the lab. And there, under plastic sheets, the reader. She connected the drive. The screen blinked to life. No password. Just a folder. Calico underscore. Inside. Hundreds of subfiles. But one stood out. Unit under 001. Harrison's Olivia. Original under Bill Daravi. She played it. The video showed a medical suite. A younger Olivia strapped to a chair. Her eyes open, but vacant. David stood beside her, younger too, with a clipboard. Baseline sync initiated. Subject responded to loss imprint faster than prior simulations. We're starting full thread embedding now. This is build 1 of 4. We'll name this one Memory Nest. If it sticks, we won't need to reinsert. Then another voice. Royce. Off camera. You think she'll survive the 4th build? David. She's already survived it once. She just doesn't know it yet. The video ended. Olivia stared at the blank screen. Then whispered, 4 versions. She had been rebooted 4 times. Each time with the same story. Same betrayal. Same love. Same David. And now everything made sense. The gaps in memory. The way she always found him again. The way he always helped. It wasn't real. It was scripted. She wasn't escaping. She was looping. And Calico wasn't a failure. It was a success. She smashed the terminal. Took the drive. Ran out of the building like it was on fire. Because it was. Inside her, something had detonated. Not anger. Not betrayal. Resolve. This wasn't just about exposing Royce anymore. It wasn't about Elias or Margot or Naomi Sutcliffe. It was about breaking the loop. Once. And for all. The final shot of the chapter. Olivia sitting in a public library, uploading Calico_core to 10 dark web servers, burning every trace behind her. She doesn't cry. She doesn't look back. But her reflection in the monitor? Smiles. And it's not her smile. Pinnacle Nexus Conference Center. Downtown San Francisco. 3 p.m. Cloudless sky. Quiet tension. The banner outside read, Shoreline. Wellness. Technology. Sovereignty. Inside, everything was polished chrome and digital hush, the kind of wealth that doesn't announce itself, just assumes it's supposed to be there. Olivia wore a wig, contacts, a press badge registered under the alias Marissa Leong, freelance reporter for a wellness blog that hadn't posted in 3 years. She kept her head down. Watched. There were 4 security checkpoints. No cell signal. No open Wi-Fi. She counted at least 10 people who moved like military but wore corporate lanyards. It wasn't a conference. It was a control room in disguise. And at the center of it all, David. He was on stage for the panel titled, Neural Freedom and the Future of Cognitive Clarity. He looked exactly the same. Trim beard, pressed charcoal suit, clear voice, calm eyes. Like someone who had never programmed a single lie into anyone's brain. Our mission at Shoreline is simple, he said. Cognitive dissonance is the virus of modern society. We offer the vaccine. Polite applause. Olivia didn't blink. She recorded everything using a pen with a micro camera. Then noticed something strange. David's wristwatch kept flashing every 12 seconds. A subtle pattern. 3 short blinks. 1 long. 3 short again. Morse code. SOS. Her pulse stopped. Could he be warning her? Or was it for her? During the break, she followed the signal to the restricted floor, using a stolen badge from a distracted event assistant. The basement was colder. All glass and matte steel. Keypads and retina scanners. Echoes. Room C12. Labeled, Prototype Integration Lab. She cracked the door with a bypass kit stolen from Elias's cache. Inside, rows of seats. A glass chamber in the center. And in the chamber, a man mid-30s, eyes closed, wires in his scalp. Unit _006. Her file. Her ghost. David. But not the one on stage. Another David. Younger. Sedated. Unaware. And then she understood. The man on stage wasn't David. Not the real one. He was an imprint. A programmed persona wearing David's memories, body mapped onto a subject and inserted into the conference. A false front for the launch. She moved to the chamber. Looked into the eyes of the real David. Asleep, vulnerable, flickering between recognition and blankness. And on the monitor next to him. Final deployment. T-29 minutes. It wasn't just a conference. It was the activation ceremony. If it went live, every Shoreline user in North America, over 3 million people, would have embedded suggestion scripts enabled within 24 hours. And she had less than half an hour to stop it. She pulled out the second drive, the one Elias gave her, with a Calico failsafe. A virus, buried inside the protocol code. But to upload it, she needed a physical port inside the server room. And that room had 2 layers of biometric security. She had none of the credentials. Except, she turned to the replica David. The imposter on stage. Now walking back through the corridor behind the platform. She grabbed a tranquilizer from her pack. Waited. He passed the corner. She struck. Quick. Clean. He dropped. She dragged him into the shadows. Placed his hand on the biometric scanner. Door 1. Unlocked. For retina access, she improvised. Used a pocket mirror. Angled it to reflect the imposter's eye back at the scanner. Door 2. Unlocked. She was in. The server room glowed with quiet malevolence. Racks on racks of blinking towers, each one holding fragments of lives soon to be rewritten. She moved fast. Slotted the drive. Ran the script. Failsafe initiated. Protocol conflict detected. Auto repair disabled. Injecting failsafe block into live kernel. 28%. 41%. Then, red lights. Alarms. Shouting upstairs. She kept going. 76%. 92%. Complete. And then the entire room went dark. Outside, chaos. Guests evacuated. Security scrambled. Backups failed to deploy. And the imposter, now conscious, staggered out of the shadows with a gun, screaming, "Where is she?" But Olivia was already moving. Down the back hall, up the maintenance stairs, out the fire exit, blending into the stampede of frightened guests. She didn't stop until she reached a train heading out of the city. That night, Shoreline issued a statement. Technical error. Delayed launch. False reports. All systems safe. But the media didn't buy it. By dawn, leaked videos, documents, and Calico files were everywhere. The program had been exposed. Not erased. Not stopped. But outed. Enough to stall them. Enough to wake people up. But Olivia knew it wasn't over. The man in the chamber, the real David, was still alive. And someone had protected him all this time. Which meant only one thing. Royce is still out there. And the final loop hasn't been broken yet. Royce had been off-grid for years. After the partial collapse of Shoreline, he vanished, off the CIA's lists, out of DARPA's reach, and buried beneath layers of shell companies and digital fog. But Olivia knew how he thought. He didn't run. He waited. He invited confrontation. And she accepted the invitation. Montana. A secluded house on the edge of Lolo National Forest. No neighbors. No signals. No safety. She arrived just before dawn. No cell service. A handgun in her coat. And one final drive in her pocket. The original Calico backup. Every log, every memory trace, every version of her that Royce had ever rewritten. Including the ones that didn't survive. Royce answered the door like he'd been waiting for an old friend. "You finally remember everything," he said. "Enough to know you broke me. More than once." "No," he corrected, calm. "I built you. You broke yourself." Inside, the house was quiet and clinical. On the walls were portraits. Faces. All women. She recognized the eyes. Version 002, 003, 005. All named Olivia. "You tested me like I was a theory," she said. "You were a hypothesis," Royce replied. "And you proved it. You survived everything. At what cost? You're still here, aren't you?" He led her down to the basement. There, strapped to a neural stim chair and a silent cardiac monitor, was David, the original. Alive. Fading. But still conscious. "He never left," Royce said. "Even after we pulled his imprint. He wanted to remember. Every time. For you." She knelt beside him. David whispered. Barely audible. "They told me you were a delusion. That you didn't exist anymore. I'm not a memory," she said. "I'm what's left." And then Royce made his offer. "You upload Calico_0 from that drive, and the loop ends. No more reboots. No more replicas. No more Olivia. Everything burns. Including him. And if I don't? We keep him. You go back in. A fifth version. Cleaner. Simpler. No memory of this." Silence. She took the drive out of her pocket. Stared at it like it was a grenade. Because it was. One final script. If she ran Calico_0, it would destroy everything. The servers, the backups, the hidden vaults, the ghost banks, the memory threads keeping David alive. Royce smiled, like a man certain of the outcome. "You won't do it. You always choose love." She walked over to the terminal. Inserted the drive. Typed the command. The screen flickered. Calico_0 armed. Confirm total data purge? She froze. Looked at David. "I don't know if I love you, or if they made me think I did." "Does it matter?" he said. "You fought for it." She gave a tired, aching smile. "That's what scares me." And hit enter. The system began purging. Screens shut down. Files dissolved. Back doors collapsed in real time. Royce lunged for the emergency panel. She drew her gun. No backups, Royce. One shot. Clean. Final. Royce dropped. No drama. No speeches. Just done. She ran to David. The monitors were fading. His pulse slowed. He looked at her calm. "It's okay," he said. "We end it. Together. I wanted to save you. You did. You saved the part of me that remembered who you really were." She held him. His monitor beeped once more, then went silent. David was gone. Outside, the sky was turning blue. She walked past the trees, toward nothing. No alarms. No signals. No code left. For the first time there was no script. Just her. Olivia. The last one. The original. The free one.